So we're talking now with Lynn Buckle, who is the Community Resource Officer with Chime. We learn about Chime and we learn about what she does. So first of all, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for inviting me, John.
You're very welcome. It's great to talk to you. So we might start, if you will, with stats. I'm really interested in stats. Do you have any stats for people who are deaf or hard of hearing or have tinnitus?
For tinnitus, yeah, there'd be about 30% of the population would experience that at some time in their lives, and about 8% would find that to be very problematic and would need to come and see someone like me who would advise them on how to kind of manage that in their lives. And for people who don't know what that is, tinnitus is a ringing or any kind of sound in your ears or in your head that isn't coming from an external source. And that can be caused by very many things. But Chime would have advisors all around the country, and I'm one of them who can help you to manage that. And there's always the clinical side has to be looked after too. So we make sure everybody has been referred to ENT and had an MRI of their ears. So that's one area that we look after. And with deafness as well, there's people who are kind of born deaf, and then there's acquired deafness, or what we would call it late deafened. And we support clients in those categories as well. It depending on what your language preference would be. If your language preference is Irish Sign Language, um, then we have kind of resource officers who work with sign language clients, and then others like myself who would work with those who don't know any sign language but are actually deaf. That I'm using two kind of technical terms there. There is a difference between hard of hearing and deafness if you're going to be clinical about it. But there's an overlap, obviously, and I sign as well. All the staff in Chime are trained to sign, and I have hearing loss myself. So I haven't given you any stats yet, but Irish Sign Language was made an official language in Ireland in 2017. It was recognised as a legal language, the same as the Irish languages. So, it's very important that everybody knows that and learns it as well. The more people who learn it, the better it is for
Is it
integration.
easy to learn?
Well, it's very different to learn. If you're good at learning languages, you'll be surprised it is just completely different because it's a visual language and it's not based on English grammar at all. Not at all. It's a completely independent language, all of its own. And if you are hard of hearing, there are free classes. If you're deaf, there are free classes. The Irish Deaf Society run them. And if you come from a foreign country to Ireland, and maybe you have sign language and that's your way of communicating, but it's a different one because you've come from abroad, then also you can get free classes at the Irish Deaf Society as well. There are evening classes, day classes, online. The Irish Deaf Society is based in Deaf Village in Cabra, and Chime also have offices. Lots of departments that we run are in Deaf Village. It's a very busy centre for hard of hearing people as well as deaf people. D with a capital D and D with a small d.
Right.
So we do encourage people to kind of come and visit all of our kind of centres. We've got 3 centres in Dublin, all of the places in Deaf Village in Cabra, and we have a resource centre in North Frederick Street, which is in the centre of town, just off Parnell Square. And I'm actually based in the Tallaght office. So we're in Bellegarde Square North in Exchange Hall. So we have kind of we cater for all age groups as well, not just the older person. We work with newborns and their families all the way through studenthood, through the workplace, through retirement, because everyone experiences their deafness or hearing loss differently, and that can happen at any age. It's not just something that happens to older people, which is one of the misconceptions.
So is the contact for Chime the website? Is it the
Well,
best contact?
it is. The website is www.chime.ie, and there's an email on there which is info@chime.ie. And then we also have, I mean, I'm happy to give out our phone numbers as well if anybody wants them. The
Maybe
North
at the
Frederick,
end we'll get them from you,
jolly good, that'd be
if
great.
that's okay. So
Great.
you might tell us then what services Chime provide.
Okay, so we'll start with the newborns as well. So as soon as somebody realizes that their baby is born with a hearing loss, they will be referred automatically through the HSE system. And then our family services get notified and we would link up with them then. So that the family services would work very closely with the families of a child who is born deaf or has a hearing loss in ensuring that they have a first language, which might be Irish Sign Language, depending on their kind of level of hearing loss. And then working through the school system as well. Chime has a very active team based solely on installing the technology that's needed in the school place and then liaising with the school visitors, school home visitors, if Irish Sign Language is needed, because obviously it's the family that needs teaching sign language, not just the child.
Yeah.
So, and then the school as well. So all of that work happens at a very early point. It happens very, very quickly. And then we have a multidisciplinary team which is for the more complex cases where a child might be born deaf, but also has other additional needs. So that involves kind of social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, audiology, a whole kind of complex team working with those families. And that doesn't stop once those anybody who has hearing loss, that doesn't stop when they finish school, because we have what we call the Explore team, and they work very closely for that transitional period when somebody who's been supported very well all through their life, through school, with their hearing loss, suddenly finds themselves in a new scenario in university or PLC course or a job. How do you handle this? There are no ISL interpreters, or there's no technology to help you for listening. So that's what our team does in the Explore team. They work with access officers, they deliver hard of hearing and deafness awareness training to school, to colleges, and to employers.
So
You
you
know,
mentioned school there. What's school like for a deaf child?
um, it depends on where they're in school, really. You know, there are schools which would be designed specifically for deaf children.
Uh,
So, you know, there is the Holy Family School in Cabra, which has an intake of children who are all deaf. And, you know, classes are taught in ISL and spoken words. Some children would be oral, some would rely solely on sign language. So all of those kind of differences are kind of catered for. And there's the primary school there's the creche there, there's the second level school. And then if they were going to mainstream school instead, then you know it's the same with any child who might have additional needs. Are those hearing loss needs taken into account in the school? And those are kind of decisions that families are making at a very early stage before their child even goes to school, like which would be best for their particular child. So, and then the same with the university, you know, do they need an interpreter, or could they actually go to study a course which is taught in sign language?
wow.
And there is, you know, there are two courses. You can do the Deaf Studies course, or you could train to be an Irish Sign Language interpreter, and that's taught entirely through the medium of sign language. And then there's a new course which started, I think it was 2 years ago, because the first intake is finally qualified, where you could qualify as a primary school teacher. And that is taught entirely through the medium of Irish Sign Language. And all the students have to be deaf in order to apply to that course, so that you end up getting teachers who are actually deaf. So the children have really great role models because their teachers are actually deaf.
So it doesn't impair you in all cases.
Not remotely, no. I mean, Chime employs people like myself and my colleagues with hearing loss who are deaf. Some have been deaf throughout their lives, some are late deafened, some are hard of hearing. You know, you end up having a perfectly good job. You know, and some people are actually appropriate for what we call a cochlear implant. And that is a different way of hearing. It's not appropriate for everybody, but it gives some level of hearing to those who are deaf
Yeah.
or late deafened. And it's a completely different way of hearing, and it's not appropriate for all types of deafness or hearing loss. But some people find that that's suitable for them anyway. And they would use that along with having Irish Sign Language as well, because not everybody who's deaf would be oral. So having sign language and a cochlear implant might help. And some people are quite happy not to have a cochlear implant as well. You know, it's a personal choice.
I
And
know
often
a guy
babies,
actually, I know a guy who has a cochlear implant and it has changed his life.
it does. It does. If you experienced hearing when you were younger and then were to suddenly lose it, it's a devastating experience. And then to be offered a cochlear implant because your hearing aids aren't doing anything for you is actually wonderful. It is a difficult transition, and there is a very strict kind of referral process through GPs and ear, nose, and throat departments to Beaumont Hospital. But Beaumont Hospital in Dublin is the only hospital in the country which offers them, and they offer them for free to anybody who needs them. But they do
Wow.
have very strict medical criteria and other criteria for candidates. You know, you have to be a suitable candidate for that. But yeah, it is life transforming, and that's part of my job as well, is advising people with hearing loss about cochlear implants. And Baha's as well is another device which suits another medical problem. You know, it's some people might have a hearing aid, some people might use sign language, some people a cochlear implant. A Baha is another thing, and it works on a different process. But most people will have seen the headphones that runners use. They're called conductive headphones, so that if you're running, you can still hear the sounds of the park and traffic. Well, that came from the invention that was devised for people who would have a kind of a conductive hearing loss, and that really vibrates the sound through the mastoid bone behind the ear into the cochlea. So that suits some medical conditions, not everybody. So yeah, those kind of there are all these other kind of options which do exist, and then also assistive technology, which you might have seen this person you know who's got a cochlear implant, sometimes that wearing a loop around their neck,
Yeah.
or they might have a little microphone in their hand, and those are things which basically boost the sound levels and feed the sound directly to the cochlear implant. I use them. It feeds the sound directly to my hearing aids from my laptop, from my phone, all those sort of devices. It's great technology. It's just an extra layer because I'm guessing all of the time words. I'm reading captions at the moment as we talk, but I'm also guessing some of the words, and this technology helps with an extra layer, the same as lip reading does. So, you know, we practice lip reading in some of the groups that I run, and there's a kind of an art to that. But for some people, all the technology in the world, all the hearing aids, all the lip reading in the world doesn't mean you're going to hear like a hearing person.
Eh,
You're still going to be missing things out. So part of our role in Chime is educating people who aren't suffering from hearing loss. We're educating the rest of society about good communication skills. And that's called the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Awareness Training. So we go around to different kind of HSE clinics, to private companies, to public bodies. Anybody who asks us will deliver that training for free, so that you can work with your colleagues or with your customers in a deaf-friendly or a hard of hearing friendly way.
In the area of entertainment, is enough being done with regard to television, cinema, theatre, sign performances and captioned performances?
Are you saying there's not enough being done?
I'm asking, is there enough happening in that area?
Well, we're constantly campaigning in Chime for more to be done. Our advocacy officer has done a huge amount of work, Brendan Lennon, with RTE on ensuring that captions are available, and we have a kind of a complaints form as well, and they want complaints. You know, there is a body specifically set up by RTE to take complaints about caption failures. And part of my job as an individual community resource officer is to explain to people who are using captions on their TV how to use them correctly. Because some people just think, oh, you set it up through your RTE account. But there's also the issue of, are you using your captions, which are available on all modern TVs? If your TV's 8 years old or newer, you're going to be able to use your own individual settings to run captions. If you're streaming your RTE News, say, for instance, news program through Virgin Media, and that's how you get your TV programs is through Virgin Media, then sometimes there can be a lag and sometimes there can be a problem because RTE have shared the captions file with Virgin Media and they've sent it a bit too late, or they forgot to send the captions file or something like that. So, you might be streaming through Sky, and that particular day they forgot to send the file which has all the captions in. So it's a bit hit and miss. So we love to hear complaints about captions because then we can report them. In terms of, you asked about entertainment like theatres and cinemas. Oh my goodness, that is a problem as well, and that's part of our job as well to kind of change that. There are newsletters coming out through the Irish Deaf Society every week, which tells you which cinemas have screenings with captions on. Unfortunately, it's usually on a Tuesday morning. We're not getting a Saturday night showing with captions. And I think that will change because younger people are much more prone to using captions regardless of hearing loss. They'll be sitting on their phones watching YouTube videos or videos of anything with captions on. So I think it's become more normalized to see captions on everything. And as part of my job, to advocate for having them in the workplace as well, and in schools and colleges, or in any meetings, just to have a tablet or a screen behind you, which is transcribing all the words as they're being said. There are so many free programs which do it automatically. And as soon as I say it to somebody, there's going to be about 6 people in the room who are going to think, oh, that's great, I can use that now. And they would never have identified as having a hearing loss, but they will use those captions once they're there.
Can I ask you, the approach from Chime seems to be a great community-based approach. It must be a great comfort for a parent of a new or a newly diagnosed person when they get there first to know that there's so many people and so many people to help.
It's so vital to find your tribe. It really is. For those families who are first experiencing that with their babies who've been newly diagnosed, it is transformational for them to meet others like themselves, and for the children too. And it is for adults. Anybody who has any kind of hearing loss, it is transformational to meet your peers and to see that you're not alone, which is why Chime runs a newly diagnosed weekend for families around the entire country to come together and talk about their feelings around that, and to see role models of people who work in Chime who are deaf or hard of hearing and have great careers, to see that it's not the end of the world, that there are ways around it of managing a full-time job and a career and a family and having hearing loss and being deaf. So and that carries on throughout life then as well. We run support groups in Dublin and around the country, but I run 3 a month, and there are weekly ones based in Deaf Village in Cabra, based in our North Frederick Street branch, based here in Tala. We have 2 in Tala because there's one for people who have tinnitus, one who have hearing loss, one for lip reading, one for people who are deaf, others who have cochlear implants. So it's great to get together, and then people end up having social lives beyond those groups. And that's really important, because if you've got any sort of hearing loss, going out to a social event is a bit of a nightmare with hearing people, because you cannot hear what's going on. And everyone's like, oh, I can never hear anything in the pub, but it is much worse if you don't have full hearing or any hearing at all. So it's great to be able to go out with other people who have the same kind of hearing loss as yourself and just have a great time, because you all understand what it's like. And you'll find other ways of communicating. There are other ways.
Do you provide services for the likes of babies and toddlers?
Definitely, we do. We have what we call the family services team, and they and as do the multidisciplinary team and the social work team, work very closely with babies and toddlers, because that's the key time in a child's life for learning their first language. And if they can't hear the spoken word, then their brain development is going to be affected lifelong, and they're going to be severely held back. So it's really important that they have sign language, and that can only be kind of shared if you're teaching the family sign language, if they're meeting other parents who are using sign language, meeting other children who are using sign language, and getting everything in place before the 4th birthday. In fact, they're now saying it's before the 3rd birthday. So we have kind of monthly meetups for all around the country, but we definitely do in Dublin as well. And so parents can bring their children along. They bring their hearing children as well with them, so it's a big mix. And to have a fun days, to have information days. And then, like I said, we have a social work team as well who would work very closely with those families, giving the supports necessary to kind of ease the transition through childhood. So yeah, we do work very, very closely with babies and small children. And that's the crucial time in a child's life, is like the under threes. And all of those children are referred to us by the HSE as well. There is that safety net, they're referred to us straight away, like, Chime, you need to deal with this family, and we do straight away. It's only the new arrivals into this country who weren't born here that sometimes they might slip through the net, and we need to identify who they are. So they generally come to us at some point through the HSE, or they might have heard about us through a radio program like this.
And then ask you about the Children and Family Christmas event. It's coming very quickly.
It certainly is, and that's fully booked out. It was booked out on the day. Very, very popular. That's happening in Deaf Village in Cabra, and anybody around the country is invited to that. So there's kind of two halves. There's two sessions because there's just too many people. But you could possibly run that event for 5 days a week and it would still be booked out. We do have local events as well, so different regions around the country will run their own kind of Christmas events, but this is a great way for people in this part of the country to meet people from Galway and Cork and Sligo and Limerick. They can come together and meet other families who are experiencing the same thing, and just have a good kind of Christmas party without having all of that worry about, can I hear what's going on? Because all the staff sign, and that's kind of makes it much more accessible to everybody.
You provide a lot of services. So do you fundraise? And if so, do you have any fundraisers upcoming?
We do. We have, I think it's on the 11th of December in the square in Tala, we have our deaf choir. Damien Owens is our community resource officer, deaf lead, and he's been practicing with his groups all the Christmas carols. So they'll be signing the Christmas carols for, I haven't got the time yet, but we have a social media. We have Facebook page, and we have an Instagram account and Twitter account, and you can see the dates and the times will be up on those channels very, very shortly anyway. And we have a Christmas party. Lots of Christmas, all the different groups I mentioned all have Christmas parties coming up. I have one coming up on the 9th. My colleague has another one on the 9th. Actually, there's some places on mine. If anybody has hearing loss or tinnitus or a cochlear implant, they're welcome to come to our Christmas event. We're going on a vintage tour. And in my particular group, because some people have hearing loss, they all have hearing loss to some extent, but some of us find that a real struggle, even with hearing aids or cochlear implants, to hear. So I bring along assistive technology to every event, which gives an extra boost to your hearing aids, or to your hearing if you don't have hearing aids in. And I provide captions as well on a kind of on a screen, and we kind of know how to communicate effectively as well.
Very good. And we're coming right to the end of our lot of time. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Well, definitely do get in touch, because what I've discovered and what I've experienced in my own life with my own hearing loss is you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's out there to help you. You don't know about the assistive technology. Most people don't know how to connect their phones to their hearing aids. Most people don't know how to connect to public loop systems in a church or a doctor's or a hospital or on the Lewis. So there's so much more to supporting hearing loss that people don't know about. And it's only when you walk in the door or contact us that somebody like me meets you and said, do you know about this? Do you know about the social groups? Do you know about the social workers? Do you know about the flashing smoke alarms for your own safety at night time? Do you know about this? So if there's one thing that people take away from this conversation today, it's do get in touch with Chime, www.chime.ie, info@chime.ie. And it doesn't matter who you have to ask for, you will be put in the right direction of the right person, depending on the area you live in. So there's myself here in Taller and Damien Owens, and we have in North Frederick Street, there's a whole team working in there as well. So we'd be delighted with everyone who gets in touch, and we can help you, whether it's tinnitus, hearing loss, deafness, whatever your age, do get in touch.
Lynn Buckle, thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.